All right, welcome 8th graders. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer because, well, today we're going on a bit of a journey. We're going to literally look under the hood of your favorite books, movies, and plays. I mean, have you ever actually wondered what makes a story so captivating? Like why you literally can't put a book down at 2 a.m. or why you're just on the edge of your seat in a movie theater? Well, today we're exploring the anatomy of a story. We're going to zero in on two major drama elements, conflict and climax. We'll break down the mechanics of storytelling, and trust me, by the end of this lesson, you're going to be reading and watching everything with a completely new set of eyes.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's lesson. First up, the heart of the story. Second, internal versus external conflict. Third, reaching the climax. Fourth, godly wisdom and conflict. And finally, we'll wrap up with a quick check your understanding.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the heart of the story. So, I want you to really think about this for a second. Think about your absolute favorite movie. Or, that one book you read last summer that you just could not put down. What actually makes a story impossible to put down? Is it just, I don't know, nice characters doing nice things all day? No way, of course not. That would be incredibly boring. I mean, a story about a guy who wakes up, eats some toast, has a lovely day, and goes back to sleep? Yeah, that's definitely not a story you're buying a ticket for. So what's missing here?
Well, let's dive into it. Tension, drama, conflict. These three words, they are literally the lifeblood of entertainment. Without them, drama simply lacks that emotional grip to actually hold an audience's attention. Think of it kind of like a rubber band, right? If it's just sitting there on a desk, it's not very interesting. But when you pull it back, stretching it tighter and tighter, that is tension. You're just waiting for it to snap. And that anticipation, that's exactly what a writer is creating in a story by using conflict.
So let's get a really clear definition here. Conflict is the problem that drives the story. If a story is a car, conflict is the engine. Now, sure, a play might have multiple smaller issues. Maybe a character loses their keys or they get into a minor argument with a friend, but there is always one central main conflict acting as the big engine for the whole shebang. Understanding this is absolutely crucial. Recognizing that main conflict helps you see exactly how the story builds and why certain moments just hit us with such heavy emotional impact.
Moving right along to Section 2, internal versus external conflict.
Okay, so conflict actually happens on two very different battlegrounds. First up, we've got internal conflict, which happens entirely inside a character's mind. It's kind of like an invisible war. Think about Shakespeare's great play Macbeth. After he murders King Duncan, Macbeth isn't just out there fighting armies. He's battling his own agonizing guilt and his really dark ambition. That struggle is completely internal. On the flip side, we have external conflict. This is when a character is up against outside forces, other characters, society, or even nature itself. A perfect example here is the classic play A Raisin in the Sun. The younger family faces this very real, harsh, external force of racial discrimination when they're trying to buy a house in a white neighborhood. They're fighting a tangible external barrier. And you know what? Every great story is going to have one, or honestly often both, of these types of conflicts just pushing the characters to their absolute limits.
All right, Section 3, reaching the climax.
Let's take a look at how this actually builds across a narrative roadmap. Notice how it works step by step here. Step 1, we're introduced to the central conflict. The core problem is established. Then, Step 2, rising tension. Things get worse, the stakes get way higher, and those internal and external battles really heat up. Then we hit Step 3, the climax. Boom, the explosion. It's the absolute peak of the story. And finally, Step 4, resolution. The dust finally settles and we get to see the aftermath. And here's the thing. You just cannot have a satisfying resolution without a powerful climax.
So, what exactly is it? Well, the climax is the most intense moment, where the main conflict reaches its turning point. It usually happens right near the end of the play. It's literally the moment of truth. And hey, by the way, if you ever act in a play or a movie, recognizing this turning point is honestly your most important job. Actors have to know exactly when the climax is hitting so they can deliver their lines and actions with the absolute maximum highest level of energy and emotion. If an actor misses the climax, man, the audience just feels totally let down. We can actually map these elements onto some of the greatest masterpieces of literature. Now, we already talked about Macbeth's internal struggle with guilt and the younger family's external struggle with discrimination. But let's take a look at how the climax functions.
In Shakespeare's Hamlet, the central conflict is Hamlet trying to decide if he should avenge his father's death. The climax? It's that thrilling final duel where swords are clashing, there's poison in the cup, and all those major tensions finally just explode into action. Or think about Arthur Miller's The Crucible. The stakes there are literally life and death. The climax comes when John Proctor has to make this massive choice: falsely confess to witchcraft to save his own life, or refuse, keep his integrity, and face execution. When he refuses to falsely confess, which seals his fate, right? That is the climax. The tension breaks. The ultimate turning point is reached.
Which brings us to Section 4, Godly Wisdom in Conflict.
In Matthew 5:9, Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." I want you to really let that sink in for a moment. You see, while conflict and drama make a play incredibly entertaining to watch, our real lives aren't a stage. In real life, God doesn't call us to be the source of drama. He calls us to be peacemakers. When tension is rising in your friend group or maybe in your family, your job isn't to push it to a climax. Your job is to help resolve that tension, to bring peace where there is frustration. And this really brings us to the core of the HeroesMart Academy Godly Learners philosophy. Romans 8:6-7 teaches that keeping the mind spiritually minded leads to life and peace. HeroesMart Academy intentionally intertwines biblical morality with education because honestly, education without morality can hurt. Knowledge and intelligence should help you make wise, God-honoring choices, rather than simply just making you more capable. Think about it. If you have incredible intelligence but use it to stir up conflict, you aren't living out God's purpose. So I want to highly encourage you to pursue absolute academic excellence, like learning the deep anatomy of a story today, but do it while keeping your mind centered on God, truth, wisdom, and righteous choices. Because at the end of the day, that is what leads to true life and peace.
All right, let's wrap things up with Section 5. Check your understanding.
Here's question 1. Define conflict in drama. Take a second. Think about it. What did we say the engine was? Yep, conflict is the problem that drives the story. Without it, the car just doesn't move forward.
Okay, question 2. Explain the difference between internal and external conflict. Do you remember the two battlegrounds? Internal conflict happens inside a character's mind, like dealing with guilt or fear. External conflict, on the other hand, is a battle against outside forces, like fighting another character, facing unfair laws, or maybe trying to survive a crazy storm. Great job!
Now for question 3. Identify a climax in a play and explain how it connects to the resolution. Think back to John Proctor in The Crucible, or Hamlet's final duel. The climax is the turning point, right? The highest peak of tension. And it connects to the resolution because once that huge explosion of action happens, the tension is finally released, allowing the story to settle down and resolve. It basically acts as the bridge straight to the end of the story.
And finally, here is your homework and your personal challenge. It's your turn. I want you to create a short scenario with a conflict and describe the possible climax. Use what you've learned today. Create an amazing engine of a conflict, build up that tension, and give us a spectacular turning point. You have the academic skills to write a fantastic story and the godly wisdom to live a peaceful life. So as you go out into the world today, ask yourself this: when you face a real-life turning point, are you going to escalate the drama, or will you be the author of a peaceful resolution?